Hey viewers, this is Slick Sinister with another episode of Tekken 4 Thought. The topic I'm going to discuss is a concept I like to call less is more. In Tekken, there's a lot of information to digest. You have a large move list for each character. You have general and advanced gameplay options to add on top of that. You have the ground game, throw game, movement, and wall game. Having so many choices is a plus for a variety of reasons, but this also overwhelms many players' decisions during the match. One result is that players try to do too much with their options. Another result are players not knowing what options they should normally use. At times it's much more efficient to have key moves in rotation so you can focus more on your opponent than yourself. A good way to incorporate this is by having around 10 moves to rotate for offense. You should also know at least the general punishment your character can do for defense. Depending on who you use, it should be second nature to apply around 20 to 25% of your move list. Now, of course, you'll utilize more moves than that. The purpose of this is to allow you to think more about the match versus what you should be doing. So how do we go about finding solid moves to regularly use? We're going to look for moves you should have in rotation to cover certain spots. You need to normally use moves that give you a chance to approach your opponent. You need some mids, lows, moves with tracking to catch sidestep. Your character may also have moves with some range on them. For defense, you want moves for block punishment and with punishment on standby. So here are some character examples of less is more. So right now I have Jack on the screen, and I'm just going to go over some key moves, or in my opinion, that most Jack players you're going to see use. Simple yet effective. Prime example, just a standing 2. Advancing jab, has nice range. It's a slow startup for a big person, but that's okay, because we're going to play the range game with Jack anyway. You have down forward 1, which is a mid, has follow-ups to it. You have down forward 4, which is a quick mid kick. You have down back 1, which is a 12 frame low. Most of the time no one's going to see that. If they block it a little parry, they're looking for it, they're not reacting to it. You have forward 1, which is an elbow, which causes a knockdown. You can kind of drag it out if you want to, and there's Oki on top of that. You have down 4. I put down 4 because it's safe on block and slightly positive on hit, and he crouches. You have back 2. Now, even though back 2 is slightly slow, he gets down low a little bit, and it's +5 on block. You have full crouch down back 1. Now, be careful, because this move has no range other than at range 0, but it's +6 on hit. That's a good low to mix up with if you're near somebody. You have the classic debug, use at your own risk because it's launch punishable on block. And you have up back both punches for a homing move. Now for punishment, for a 10 frame you have his forward 2. You have 2-1 for 11 frames. You have a shoulder down for both kicks for 13 for those hop kicks. You have down forward 2 at 15, which has very good range, as you can see, and is also a good whiff punisher. Now for wall rising punishment, you have wall rising 4 at 11. You got wall rising 2-1 at 14. And then you have wall rising 1 launching at 15. So with applying less is more with Jack, it's easier to execute because his pokes have range and they're quick for a big person. They also cover situations in the neutral game effectively. You can nitpick at distance and check how your opponent responds, and you can then pull out more moves if you need to, because it's very easy to rotate standing 2 to advance. Even on block is +1. You can confuse people with down forward 4. Always good to try out with down back 1. Most people, even if they know it's coming, it's still hard to react to. You have wall rising 4. You have forward 1 if you want to drag it out. Now it is -6, but there's the pushback to it. So with Jack, you can kind of play the range game and cycle those moves. Now you can do all the other stuff if you want to, but that was just a general example for purpose. Now that's just Jack. Jack doesn't have that many moves in comparison to a lot of the cast, even though he has 104. So I went over about 20 of those. 20, 25. Now let's say we have another character where there's a little bit more maintenance to him. I'm going to use Steve this time around. Still keep Paul. Now with Steve, you can apply the same concept. However, you have to be careful that you have to be aware of going into his flicker stances and duck canceling to make his move safe. For example, just for poking around with Steve, you have his jab series, standing jab, 1-1-2, 1-2-1. So with 1-2-1, if you go into flicker, it makes it at less disadvantage. Same thing with peekaboo. So you always want to keep that in mind, that as a Steve player, even though you can play compact, you're still going to have that maintenance of going into stances and canceling out of the stances so you can move again. Now you have down 4-1, that's a good poke. Down 4-1 has follow-ups. Down 4-1-2, down 4-1-2-1. You can do sways after it. You can duck cancel after it. And you're gonna do a lot of duck canceling with this move to cover yourself so you can block again. You have down 4-2, the gut punch. Now, pretty much every time you do this gut punch, you're gonna want to do a duck cancel because on block it's -11, but if you duck cancel, it's -2. Now you have his 2-1 series, which is an underused move. 2-1 in the flicker is plus 14. No guarantee follow-up, but they got a block. And plus 13 if you're going to peekaboo. You have a quarter circle 4-1, which is a 16 frame power hit, wall splats. Now on block, if you don't do it without the flicker, it's -10. So in flicker makes it -3 safe. You have good old-fashioned back 1. Now back 1 on block with no transition is -14. That's bad. So you want to go into flicker as well to make it -1. You have down 1, which is neutral on hit, so be careful trying to advance afterwards. But it's just an annoying low because it high crushes and it's pretty fast. You have down back 3-2, which comes out very fast at 16, but use as your own risk because if blocked, that's a punish, a bad one. You also have up forward 1, which is +5 on hit. On block is -6, but you're at disadvantage, but you can still block and so forth. Now for punishment with Steve, you have 1-1-2 at 10 frame. You have 2-1 at 12. You have back 1-2 at 13. Now if you want, you can still use 1-1-2 because it does a few points more damage. It's understandable. At 14, you have Sonic Fang, down forward both punches. Now Sonic Fang does have good range. It can punish a lot of stuff that has pushback to it. Don't throw it out because it's -12. And you have at 15 frames, Steve doesn't get a launch at 15, but he does get forward both punches too, which allows you for Oki. And then at 17, he gets his launcher, which is high crushes, but be careful because it's -14 on block, so use sparingly. Now for wall rising punishment, Steve is pretty simple. You get wall rising 1-2 at 11 frames, and then for 18 frame punish, you get full crouch down forward 2. Steve doesn't have that much in the wall rising department. Now using less is more with Steve is an acquired taste. At close range, Steve gets much mileage with pokes because you go in and out of flicker, duck cancel, down 2-1, all that good stuff. But you can't mess up the cancel because if you do, a lot of people get antsy and frustrated and they'll try you. And it doesn't take much to get launched if you're not aware or really comfortable doing those cancels. Also, Steve is a counter hit specialist. His attacks, when blendered, are meant to agitate your opponent into pressing the button. He has a multitude of options, but most of the time it's not wise to try them. Going for fancy options one time too many can cost you your health bar. With characters like Steve, Farong, and a lot of stance characters, some people when you first play them, you want to do all these mix-ups and options, which are cool. And if someone's freezing up or trying to pay attention, you can catch them slipping. But most of the time, people either aren't aware of them or they don't care. So sometimes you gotta just chunk up, you know, some of your move lists and sacrifice that for a moment just to see if they're going to let you do it. Now, compact play with Steve along with execution will give you plenty of less is more. Now, this concludes my segment. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Hit the like and subscribe button and stay tuned. There's more content to come. Thanks.